What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another Purpose Serve podcast episode. I'm your host, Daryl Wingfield. Today we're gonna be talking about the importance of struggle and why, for the most part, when you reach a rock bottom, how that oftentimes can be like a sign that you need to change, and oftentimes, not oftentimes, I can't say because I can only speak for myself and the situations that I've been put in. But depending on how you look at a situation, you can use like bad situations to your benefit. Now, at any given point, at any given moment, there's somebody in this world that's like going through it. You know what I mean? So I hope that with this podcast episode, I can help some people that's going through tough situations that they're in, and feel as though that there's no way like out of the situation that they're in. Now, we're gonna backtrack to, I would want to say, 2015, so about 6 years ago. Yeah, just about 6 years ago. Now, for me, 6 years ago, this is when I started heading down this path that I'm currently on now. But at that time, it was completely different. My mindset was completely different. The things that I was doing were completely different, and the people that I was involved with were completely different for the most part, I guess. But when like around that time, that was definitely like I was reaching a peak or a crossroads in my life where if I didn't do something about it, things was going to spiral out of control. Now, if you guys notice, like with this podcast, I really, I say personal things like regarding me and my personal life, but for the most part, I don't really go into detail on a lot of things because that's just the type of person that I am. I'm a very to myself kind of guy. And the older I've been getting, the more and more it's been that way. So with this podcast, it has been challenging me with the way that I present things and, try to be as relatable to you guys as possible. But you guys got to work with me. You got to understand that, it's difficult to be doing this in the first place. I'm not even going to lie. I enjoy it, but it's really difficult. But around that time, 5 years ago, I was smoking weed every day, chilling, having a good time every day. That was pretty much like my life. But at the same time, I knew I wasn't getting nothing out of it, but I didn't really care about the consequences of anything because I didn't think that anything could like very well happen to me. But I I was I was like around that time, it was a weird mindset. I wasn't thinking positive at all about like pretty much anything. I was just going through the motions of every day, just getting through with it and just trying to feel good about the day, even though I was feeling bad about the day. So ultimately, there was a boiling point. Now, the boiling point was when I got arrested. So the night I got arrested, I was hotboxing with my friends. I dropped them off or whatever, or they got out my car, and I ended up at a light. A cop pulled up behind me at the light. Now, I didn't roll my windows down, and the crazy part about it was like my friends was just sitting there saying when they got out the car, like, dog, like, yo, you should roll your windows down. Now, the kind of mindset that I had, it was just like, why? What's the point? Like, you know what I mean? Why would I do that? That was just kind of weird that y'all even asked me that in the first place. That was the first sign that something was about to go wrong. That was the very, very first sign. I ain't paying no mind to it. The second sign was when I was at the light and the cop pulled behind me. Mind you, around this time, I would want to say was 2 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, so it was 2 o'clock in the morning. This cop gets behind me, and I'm mad paranoid, of course, because I'm like, oh God, if he pulls me over, I'm about to be in some trouble. I'm about to be in some serious trouble. So we get past the light, and then as soon as we get past the light, drive for probably like 2 seconds. He flashes high beams, and then after that, he turns on his lights, and I'm like, oh my God, this is not good. The worst part of it is, I'm literally on the street that I live on. I'm literally on the street that I live on, and I'm probably like not even a mile away from my house. So I'm sitting there like, wow, is this really happening right now? There's no way that this is happening. Like at first, I was in denial because I'm like this is not real. This can't be real. You know, I sobered up real quick. Yeah, that friedness was gone as soon as I seen those lights. It was over. Um, but you know, there was like a little weed in the car. Nothing like OD crazy. I didn't have like pounds or anything. But um, I got detained while they were searching the car or whatever. And then after that, found marijuana, ended up getting arrested. Um, so they put me in the back of the cop car, and at this point, the reality is like of the situation is starting to like set in. So it was a moment, a real distinct moment where I got like real sick to my stomach, like really sick to my stomach, and I started to get like lightheaded. Like, I don't know why. I literally don't know why that happened, but I'm like, oh my God. So the cop comes back and he was just like, you good? You need me to call an ambulance? I'm like, nah, I'm just, I got to get myself together. So they go back to searching the car, and then they come back, and then they say that they found a bullet in my car. So I'm just like, yo, this is crazy. And to be quite honest, to be perfectly honest with you guys, I didn't have a gun. You know what I mean? I can't explain the bullet, but I'm going to probably save that for later down the line. You know what I mean? Because of the people that's involved, but ultimately, once he found that, I was just like, dang. In my head, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm going to prison tonight. It's over. Like, yo, I'm thinking crazy, you know what I mean? Like, dag, like, you know what I mean? How long I'm about to be sitting in county. So I'm sitting there the whole time, and so many things is processing in my head at once. And for the most part, the main thing that I was thinking about was, how did I get to this point, like right now? Like, what led me to this point? And this is when the first signs of my self-awareness was starting to kick in the realm of me trying to change for the better. Now, at the moment, I'm sitting there like in my head, like I said, like just now, that I'm thinking that, I'm about to go to jail. Like, I'm really about to go to jail. Like, but eventually they take me down to the police station and everything, and ended up my mom ended up picking me up from the police station and everything that night. So this is when my mom picked me up. This was all new to her. Like, if you guys watch my previous podcast, I think it was like she was on my podcast episode 11, I think. But y'all see the type of person that my mom is. So when she picked me up from the police station, she was like really, really, really like surprised. Now, the reason why, just to backtrack even more, that I got pulled over in the first place is that I had a warrant for a speeding ticket, I think, that I didn't pay in like East Brunswick, I think. I don't know. That was like mad long ago. But that's the reason why I got pulled over. Now, when we were leaving the police station, my mom is just like, spazzing as any mom would in that situation. And like, due to the fact that this was in a town that I lived in, and my mom is a state trooper, the cops knew who my mom like actually was. So they knocked on the door because I wouldn't tell them, like, you know what I mean, to get in contact with my mom. Because honestly, I'm an idiot. In that moment, I was just thinking that I'd rather go to jail than for my mom to actually find out. So they were just like, call your mom, gotta call your mom. And I was just like, nah. So they just decided, okay, since you don't want to call them, we're just gonna drive over there. We're just gonna drive over to your house. So that's exactly what they did. Now the next day, my mom like that very, very next morning. My mom honestly didn't know what to do. It was like on one of those lines where it's just about like she was just on the verge of like, you got to get out of here, you know. But that point didn't come yet. That point didn't come yet. But I was like really, 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 really for the first time in like a long time, I was upset with myself. I was extremely upset with myself. You know, I ended up cutting my hair short. You know, damn near had a baldy. But that was like the very, very like first moment of like or experience that made me start changing and heading into a different direction. And for the longest of times, well, around that time, after that incident, I wasn't around literally like anybody pretty much for like the next like month and a half. I literally like stayed to myself. And during that little stretch, I started figuring, like looking back on the situations that I placed myself in and I was still currently in, due to the fact that nothing really ain't going to change from one day to another. And I believe that was like a Thursday night. So this is like a Friday morning. But like I said, nothing is going to change like overnight. You gotta slowly but surely make that change. Slowly but surely. You know, I compare those slow changes literally to the 4 seasons that we have in a year. Every single day there's like a slow change that's going on that we barely even notice. But when we take a step back and look at the whole year for what it is, we can all see like, oh yeah, January from March or April, you know, it was cold, and April to like, you know, August, it was hot. You know, that's just an analogy, just trying to sum it up for you guys. But just to let you guys know that change happens every day, but it's so small and so minute that for the most part you don't even recognize it. And I was a part of that. I was that person that was the seed that got planted. And as I kept going, taking a different way about going about how I would typically go about things, I started putting myself in different situations. I started thinking differently and all of that. But like I said, it didn't happen overnight. And in fact, it's like to the point where it's literally been, like I said, how many years? Like 6 years since that was the case. And I told y'all, I've been saying this on a podcast, like the previous 2 years was me really honing in on the person that I've become at this very moment, you know. And it's just it's crazy, man. Like I'm this has been dawning on me for like the last couple days, because I started changing the way like I view the world, that from that small like specific moment, you know, because ultimately I didn't want to get put in that situation again, because to me that was worst case scenario, you know, in my head before that moment even came. That was worst case scenario. So to actually get put in a worst case scenario, it was just like, yo, nah, this cannot happen again. You know what I mean? I got to start being on my P's and Q's. But around that time, I didn't have a plan to go about this. I just knew that I had to make a change. And like I said, I removed myself from everyone from pretty much like a month. And this is another thing that I talked about on this podcast, like constantly, about removing yourself from situations and taking a step back and looking at it for what it is. Now, I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that I had to do something differently. So I was just trying different things like in order to change. So eventually, sorry about that. That was my brother. So eventually, I just started reading books. Like the very first book that I read that I know for a fact that triggered me to start thinking differently was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which was another person that I said was like I considered like a huge inspiration, because that after I read that book, that took my mind somewhere else, and it made me believe and know that anything that I'm like I think of or imagine that I'm capable of doing, if I'm persistent enough and if I desire it enough, you know. Now, no other book like did that for me, but I guess it was because of the books that I was reading. Like I like before that point, I was reading books, but it was just like it was just a read. Now I was such in a lost place that I was doing anything to find a solution for the problems that I put myself in. You know, dealing with being on probation, which was like new to me and stuff like that. Like I didn't know anything about that. You feel me? So a lot of things that was going on, it was just like, all right, I had to put my brothers and sisters like before like everything, because I just started thinking like how would they see me and how would they look at me from this situation, and how do I feel about that? What I feel like, what I'm doing, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, they think this is cool. Like this is what's up. Like, you know what I mean? Cuz everybody doing it, I'm doing it. But it's just like that's not the I wanted like my brothers and sisters to look at me like a role model, like someone as like a source of inspiration that they can come to with anything that they're going through. Because like I said on this podcast as well, a lot of the things that I'm doing at this moment, at this very present moment, is solely because that I really did wish that somebody was there to tell me and guide me and mentor me to stay focused and to not get beat up by life. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people just be getting punched on by life. It happens to all of us, but that's not the end all be all. You can always just switch that dynamic and switch that narrative, but it's always, to me personally, it just boils down to how you look at the situations that you're in the world that you live in. That's like the most important thing. Now, for me, when I was going through this process at first, like I said, and I'm reading this book, Think and Grow Rich, it was breaking things down in such a way that I could really understand it. You know what I mean? And that's all I was looking for at the time, was just an understanding on the situation that I was going through, and how can I make something of myself and not just, you know, be on par with everything that's going on. But I realized through reading that book, that whatever it is that I choose to do, that I gotta really devote myself to it and look at it in a way where that it's going to happen. Don't look at anything else. It's going to happen, and being persistent and managing your faith throughout this whole process. So when I first read this book, right, and the very first part of this book is just saying that this book is not for entertainment purposes. If you're reading this, the author wants you to apply the things that he's putting forth to you. Now, I first read the book. I didn't really apply it like that, but at this point, I read this book like 6-7 times. And every time I read it, due to the fact that, my awareness and my perspective keep changing, that it's just more and more insight and more information I keep seeing that was different from the last time than I read the book. But I keep jumping all over the place, my bad. But when I started applying this stuff in this book, that's when I started noticing that changes were starting to happen like around me, and things were starting to, like, I guess, like, opportunities started presenting itself. Like when I was, like I said, in high school, and even when I was in college, like, that's all I wanted to do was play basketball. That's all I wanted to do. That's all I wanted to do. But I wasn't able to. And I felt like I was cursed, like, from getting cut, from my grades not being there, all of these things. It just felt like, it wasn't in my favor, and I really did believe that I had bad luck. But then as I started going into like the mental of my mind, I started like realizing like, yo, I don't have bad luck. It's just these beliefs that I made myself really believe and didn't really question these beliefs. You know what I'm saying? But shifts started happening from then on out. But the most important thing was I had to keep applying these little shifts that was like happening. So ultimately, this started building up my consistency. This started building up my self-awareness, my spirituality, and also my character, because I was dead set on changing my habits and changing the way that I was solely as a person, and even to this day, it's still a lot of limited beliefs that I'm holding on to that I'm trying to shift through and let go, but it's not an easy thing, but I still try to apply it, you know, every single day, and that's not an easy thing to do, but if you're hearing this and this is resonating with you, then just apply the things that I'm saying. And I'm guaranteeing that you're going to start to see change for the better in your life. And you're going to start to get a clarity about the things that's going on around you and what you should and shouldn't be doing. And what you should and shouldn't be doing is different for everybody, because everybody's in a different situation, And for me, when I started looking within rather than looking outside of me, I started realizing that, I wasn't going to find my answers from typing in Google, and I wasn't going to find my answers from being on Twitter and on Instagram, and looking at other people's lives. And that was probably the most difficult thing for me to understand, because that was based off of how, I operate in my life, based off of what everybody else is doing and what everybody's opinion was, around that time, to the point where, I really stopped giving a damn what people think. And if I feel as though something is right, then I go with it. If I feel like something is wrong, then it's a no-go no more, and that's like how I operate. And ultimately, the more I kept doing this, the more I kept refining. Like, of course, around that time, I was still messing up. I was still hanging out all the time. But it slowly but surely just started slowing down. It just started slowing down, because I was being aware that I was doing the same things that got me arrested in the first place. I was aware of that. But then that made me start really thinking like, oh, this isn't right. Instead of me thinking like, I don't care. I literally don't care. It made me think totally different. Now, for you guys that's trying to make change, I say this a lot to so many people that I talk to, and shout out to my boy TJ, man. We talk about this a couple times recently, but what changed my life ultimately was I started writing things down. I literally started writing things down. Now, in 2015, after I got in trouble, it started off as like affirmations. I will write down like I'm a college athlete, I'm an overseas basketball player, I'm a millionaire, cliche stuff like that. But I started writing that down. Then as time went on, those affirmations started to get real detailed. They started to get as if I was predicting my future and predicting the type of person that I wanted to be, And it's crazy. Once you get your ideas out of your head and you manifest it somehow, some way, and a lot of times is if you start with just putting something on a paper and writing that down and seeing it, like really physically seeing it with your own eyes, it's something, there's something to it, Me personally, I can't explain what that something is, but for the most part, when people write down, and I'm not saying to-do lists and stuff like that, but write from the heart, you know what I'm saying? Just write from the heart. And a lot of the things that I wanted to do, slowly but surely, I'm still in this process now. Like, I ended up doing. Like, after I got arrested, I wrote down probably like a month and a half later that, you know, I wanted to play basketball overseas. So I was like, all right, cool. I didn't know I was going to go about it or anything. But 2 years later, after I wrote that down, I ended up playing in Girona, Spain, you know. And as time goes on, I'm noticing the things that I'm writing down is literally like it's manifesting itself. Like, probably like 3 years ago, you know, I said that like I wanted to inspire people through my words, and I didn't know how I was going to go about that. And it recently just came about in like October, when I first did my very first podcast episode. And even with that, I was so uncomfortable doing that podcast episode because it was my first time doing it. I'm a camera shop person. Well, was a camera shop person, like I said, and it was like extremely uncomfortable. But, you know, here we are, you know, on the 18th episode, I believe. And honestly, I can't even believe that this is like episode 18. It's happening so fast, to be quite honest. And for those that's listening, like, I really appreciate y'all support. I love you guys, and it means the world to me that you guys are listening, because like I've been having like a recent, I guess, inner battle with myself. Like, why do people care more about toxic things than things that make them better? Yet and still, I don't have that question answered, you know, but the fact that the people that are listening, you guys that's listening, you know, you guys got some cool vibes, you know what I mean? Because that, to me personally, that goes to show that, me personally, you got a good head on your shoulders and you're heading in the right direction. You know what I mean? And we're all in this together. Like I said in the beginning of this whole entire journey, the one thing that I'm trying to do later on in the future, you know, this is another thing that I wrote down, is I want to build a community of people that's looking out for the next person and trying to help the next person with whatever it is, or whatever specialty that they have, or service or product or anything, you know, to be willing to help the next person out. And ultimately, throughout my whole, I guess I'll say like the first like 21, 22 years of my life, it's been a process of figuring things out by myself and being super frustrated during that process and feeling like I'm alone during it, you know, and nobody likes feeling alone at all. But that's when I started realizing that I wasn't alone at all. You know, I had all the support in the world with everything that I was doing. You know, I just wasn't aware of it. And that's all it is. You just have to be aware. You just have to be mindful and just keep going, man. That's it. Life to me is, yeah, I do preach on here about, you know, finding your purpose and, you know, serving your purpose. But most importantly, with life, it's just the experience that come with it, man. You really have to learn how to enjoy this roller coaster ride and everything that comes with it, because that's what makes the experience. You get what I'm saying? And I hope everything came full circle for you guys, for like to understand that, you know, the start of this journey, for me, when I really started walking down this path, it wasn't something that was clear cut. And honestly, it was one of those things where I reached a crossroads in my life where I decided to change for the better, instead of, you know, being a victim of my circumstances and saying like, this is it. This is the person who I am. This is what it's about to be. And I'm not even going to lie, I was on the verge of that. I was really, really close. And because I'm the type of person that, like, I don't, well, I used to be. the type of person that didn't really like give a shit about, I don't know, like I said, like anything. Like I only thought about myself. Like I only thought about myself. But slowly but surely that started changing. Slowly but surely that started changing. And then after that I started noticing the type of person that I've like came to be. Like recently, this was like real funny to me. I was talking to my brother Devin. Shout out to Devin. Oh, and shout out to Denasia. Happy birthday. I love you. People give my sister a birthday shout out. I appreciate that. But I was talking to my brother Devin about pretty much, dag, I actually lost my train of thought. I should have just continued on and said what I was supposed to say. What was I going to say? This is crazy. I low-key hate when this happens, when I just straight black out. I was about to make a really, really good point. I was talking to my brother Devin recently about, what was I talking to him about? Dang, this is awkward. But in regards to my brother Devin, I talked to him. Oh yeah, it just hit me. But he told me that I talk now like how I talk on the podcast, like, and I'm starting to get that a lot. A lot of people were saying that I talk like how I talk on this podcast, but you know I was talking like this before I started doing the podcast, but it's really my well being at this point. It's who I am, you know, and I just hope that these messages that I'm trying to present to you guys is coming across. You know, I'm gonna just try to do my best to be more personable with you guys along this process. But in the future, for the future episodes that's to come, I got some really special guests that's gonna be on the episode, and I really hope that you guys enjoy. I appreciate you guys for checking in for this week's podcast episode. Please download. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. And I thank you guys for listening yet again. Serve your purpose. I appreciate you guys. Stay up.